In my opinion, one of the failings of the fighting game scene is this overblown notion of difficulty we've allowed to dominate discourse around our genre. Ultimately, difficulty is always relative to who you're fighting against. If you and your opponent are scrubs, who cares about some 7-layer deep fuzzy setup you saw on Twitter? It's not for you, yet. In fighters, for some reason, instead of people tempering their expectations of their own abilities, beginners to our genre will unfortunately watch someone like Sacco land the hardest combo imaginable, then turn the game off when they can't do it. It's basically like quitting League of Legends day one when you look in the mirror and you find out you're not Faker. There are, however, some points in that journey to improvement where you could forgive new players for suffering some teething issues, ones they can't diagnose themselves, and they often involve timing. Timing affects everything. Neutral, setups, defense, offense, everything. And the better you and your opponent are at the game, the looser the definitions of optimal timing become. But before we get abstract, let's start by looking at a really rudimentary prescriptive illustration of delays from Street Fighter V, the +2. It's a common situation. To achieve it, you need to hit someone with an attack that leaves you at +2 on hit or block and point blank. Here we're achieving that state with Sakura's heavy Tatsumaki. Her throw comes out in 5 frames, as does her standing strong. As both of these attacks only leave a 3-frame gap, they will beat any normal attack the opponent presses. So it's a 50-50, right? Block or tech? Well, not really. Even if we ignore the potential interplay of metered options like EXDPs or other reversals, the defender can skew those 50-50 odds entirely with a simple delay. You have 7 frames to break a throw in this game, so you hold back for at least 5 frames, blocking the standing medium punch, then you input your throw. This defeats both attacks. It's basically an option select that exists entirely due to timing. As the aggressor, to defeat it, you have a couple of options, but the most direct and often punishing is to also delay. With Sakura, we can use her standing or crouching heavy punch, which comes out slower than her throw or stand strong, or we can manually time a delay with a shimmy, walking out of throw range, then using a fierce to score big damage on the missed grab. Simply what you're trying to do is catch the startup of the delayed throw input, or force it to whiff. As a beginner, this sounds daunting, but interesting defense ultimately breeds interesting offense, and once you get past that initial hurdle, you'll grow to appreciate it as the decision tree grows in your mind. Now, this rudimentary idea of delaying an input to protect against quick options is literally applicable across the entire genre in countless situations. In basically any 2D traditional fighter, you'll be faced with a wake-up situation where you have to guess if they're going to reversal or block. And all you need to do to defeat this is hold back for a couple of frames, then do your attack. This beats both options due to how quick things like Shoryukens come out. And if you do it with an attack you can confirm, that's even better. These kinds of delays aren't going to single-handedly make you an Okazeme god. There's always some kind of read in there. They could potentially just wake up with a normal and take their turn. But what these options do is skew risk reward in minute ways that add up over the course of a set. And because their tells are so subtle, they can be hard for beginners to identify. It's also worth noting that these kinds of safe delays are useful when you play against people you've never fought before. If I'm in the start of a pool at a tournament, these are the exact strategies I want to employ to gauge what my opponent does, or makes them freak out, and how do they freak out. And if I can do that without taking any damage, even better. These 2 very simple delay options, and the 1,000 others I could sit here and list, are a consequence of the game's absolute basic logic. But without some level of exposure or genuine attempt at problem solving combined with a knowledge of the game's mechanical detail, you're just not going to encounter them week one, and they're fundamental. The situations I've talked about here feel miserable without these pieces of tech, and I do feel bad for those beginners attempting to level up into intermediate play without these key ideas. What I've talked about so far are more system-driven examples of delays. There is some variance to them, but they are for the most part canned call and response type situations, at least at their base level. So let's get abstract. This is a round I played a long time ago on Fightcade, and all I do is throw a delay fireball, then another, then a really delayed fireball, and it snowballs into me winning the round. Even though there is no notable huge read in here or cool reaction, I was pretty proud of this one because it has the rudiments of a more thoughtful playstyle, one that often evades me as I like to be a little bit more aggressive. Every slight pause is calculated, and for it to work, it relies upon my opponent having an understanding of standard timing for me to manipulate. The mind game here is, will I throw a fireball quickly or will I not, and instead wait to anti-air? But by delaying, I can kind of just do both. Delays can catch pre-jump or counter projectile attempts by making them unsure of when to go for them. The hesitation from my opponent hinges on them being aware of the risk reward involved in this mid-range situation. Shallow jumps don't have a huge reward in this game, but anti-airs do. So if you want to punish my fireball, you need to be pretty certain about when I'm going to throw one. What's also great is that by varying my timing, I'm able to add to their mental stack without using a single new move. This in future rounds will create bigger opportunities for jumps or other aggressive actions that should be reactable, but maybe they aren't if my opponent is worried about timing. Now, this isn't hard to do, but if you're versus a beginner, they'll often just make decisions at you rather than following a more expected pace because they lack a complex understanding of threat. So when fighting them, often your preferred playstyle will just be to play reactively, punishing mistakes they willfully throw out instead of forcing mistakes like we can do at a higher level with delays. That's honestly one of the reasons more abstract timing traps are hard to learn. Until you level up enough and you're able to fight stronger opponents, it's often just not applicable. Maybe a bit, the situational ones I showed you earlier definitely are, it's not fully, which can make you feel a little bit underprepared as you enter an intermediate skill level. I mean, God, it's hard enough to just remember all of these characters' moves, let alone when they're gonna use them. In Third Strike, delays are an absolute core to every interaction. Parries are a constant threat with a huge amount of reward to them. When you're on offense, you're always trying to play around the possibility. Now, you can just throw an opponent for trying to parry, or you can instead make them guess between forward or low parry using select options. But parries have a small lockout window after each attempt, so instead just delay the same button and play a totally different guessing game. Make things complex by adding a new dynamic of timing for your opponent, because in fighters, 50-50s are rarely 50-50s. Maybe you don't get a punish for your timing, but you will be safer, and sometimes that is all you need to win. I've spoken before about my general distaste over the phrase rock, paper, scissors. I do admit that it's useful language, but it just doesn't tell the full picture. It's easy to look at your tools in a game and go, well, X beats Y. You've been in training mode, you've seen it, and this is a good thing. You need a base of knowledge, but timing and delay changes every interaction drastically. If you feel like you have plateaued as a player, I implore you to play around with timing. It is honestly one of the most distinct difference makers in your journey to improvement. I guarantee you, those rounds where you feel like nothing works, all the decisions you make are wrong, are just a question of timing. And once you start looking for that, the sky is the limit.